Hi there. Hello. Welcome back to the Pitch Grid. Thank you so much for tuning in once again. We have a absolutely stacked week this week in terms of fixtures as the EFL is back from international break, and that means we have all sorts of fixtures at the EFL, the pitch side and grid side, as we have a kind of a letdown compared to last week in terms of what seemed like big games, but they're all huge this time of year in the NFL, so grid side is still a lot to talk about. So let's head pitch side and get this party started. First match of the weekend, we head to Home Park, where Plymouth Argyle take on Watford. Watford come into this week off the international break, off a win at home against Oxford United. Very comfortable win for them. Never really felt like they lost control of that game, to be honest. Um, their midfield was absolutely breathtaking, and Oxford just looked powerless to do anything to stop it. Plymouth did nab a result against Derby County last week, last time out, in a 1-1 draw. It was a pretty tightly contested game overall. Not much to separate between the two, and really, well, besides Derby absolutely cracking the trying to bust down the door hard with 20 shots on, and four of them on goal. So Plymouth are definitely going to hope they get a better offensive output this time in terms of shots on goal, stuff like that. Um, Coming into this match, Morgan Whitaker is the leading goal scorer, along with Abraham Sissoko for Plymouth Argyle at 3 goals each. Morgan Whitaker has played 14 of the 15 matches. For the league scorers, Bayo Youssef, he has 14 goals, 6 goals of 14 matches, and Ito Kayembe is right behind Youssef with 5 goals in 14 matches. Um, Honestly, this is a pretty. It's hard to say this because Watford are in sixth place in the playoff spots, but barely. They only are 1 point ahead of Middlesbrough. Um, yeah, I mean, besides Plymouth just have a very porous defense, and Watford has the attack to expose that. They really do. Um, they are a fast group that could has a midfield that could tear it apart. A bad defense on their day, but the thing is, Watford are just so inconsistent. You never know what you're going to get out of them. Like, just take the last two results for them. They could lose to a mid-table Swansea team 1-0 and look bad against them, and then absolutely dominate an Oxford United side that had been kind of defying a lot of the odds so far this year until recently. So it's just so weird. I mean, it's the same for Plymouth. Let's be honest. Like, this is a Plymouth team that can lose 3-0 to Leeds, but also beat Portsmouth 1-0. I mean, granted, Portsmouth aren't the you know example of how to you know who to beat. But I mean, they've beaten like Blackburn and kept Burnley to a 1-0 loss. So like Plymouth on their day have the opportunity to make this a close game. I just don't know how close they can make it. And this is off an international break, so who knows what could happen. Like I said, they got Derby County just absolutely trying to bust the door down in that last match, and they just couldn't. Um, you know, Even though Plymouth tied it in the 41st minute, it never felt like, you know, they could do anything after that much. And just it's a very weird game because on the one hand, you would think Watford should be the favorites here, and they probably are. But at the same time, like you could easily see Plymouth somehow stealing a point out of this. Um, yeah, I could easily see this being a draw or a Watford win. Or is the championship? Plymouth could absolutely steal all 3 points here. Who knows? But it just doesn't feel likely considering. Plymouth have such a porous defense. I mean, to be fair to Plymouth, Watford does not exactly have the best defense either. They have conceded 22 goals. Plymouth has conceded 26. It just it all depends on what stats you like to look at. They have Watford has scored more goals, but also and Plymouth haven't. They've scored 23. Watford has 23 goals scored to Plymouth's 15, which shows Plymouth are very limited in the attack. But they also are facing a defense that, on its day, can be very porous and very leaky. So it Watford is surely going to want all 3 points, keep a distance from Middlesbrough and the other playoff contenders. They're trying to crowd them out of a playoff spot. Um, but I could easily see this going any of 3 ways. Of the 3 ways that could happen, watch it be a draw though, like a 1-1 draw somehow. Um, Bristol City takes on Burnley in one of the early games of on the lunchtime games on Saturday. It is at Ashton Gate. This is Bristol City coming off of a 2-0 win at Norwich, so they finally broke the streak of Norwich being unbeaten at Carrow Road. So that's no longer a thing for the Canaries. Um, Again, Bristol City are just inconsistent. That's coming off of 3-1 win over Preston, but also a 2-1 loss at the death, admittedly, to Sheffield United. So this is a Bristol City side like that also tied Leeds, but also tied Stoke and beat Middlesbrough. So like it's their results are just all over the place, and they look like they have the potential to be good. They do, but Naki Wells has only scored 5 goals in 12 matches. He's been inconsistently available, and Bristol City are dealing with a lot of injuries. They are going to be having some people back, like Scott Twine. I think is available for this match. I think Josh Brownhill also scored. I mean, Burnley, to be fair, have also not been able to find much of a goal scoring prowess themselves. Um, Burnley, though, are one of the best defenses in the championship, having only allowed 6 goals in 15 matches, which is excellent. Absolutely brilliant for Scott Parker's side. It's just you look at the attack and assist goals for Bristol City has actually more goals at 20 to 18 for Burnley. A goal difference of 1 for Bristol City to 12 for Burnley. I I could easily see this being a draw. I could like a 0-0 or 1-1, just because Bristol City is also a very draw heavy side. Granted, they might be getting some key pieces back like Twine, like I said, but how effective he's going to be in his first game back, who knows? And how limited is he going to be as well? Burnley are, they're going to have pieces back too, I'm sure. Um, it feels like a draw incoming because both are extremely draw heavy. Burnley is so hard to break down. Bristol City do not have a good defense per se. Um, they just are very bad at defending a counterattack. And that is what Burnley like to do. They like to counter you from turnovers at the defensive in their half. They turn you over and then just counter you. And honestly, that could be the advantage that Burnley have on Bristol City. And if Bristol City can't defend 1 or 2 of those chances, that easily could end up in all 3 points for Burnley. So, at the same time, like Bristol City are pretty good, like being able to score, being resilient. It just really depends, if they could use the home advantage to their advantage, or if Burnley just are able to pounce on counterattacks, which could be the way to go for Burnley, honestly. Just attack that weakness of Bristol City's. So this will be a fun game. It's a top 10 matchup. 2 teams in the top half of the table. Um, Bristol City's at 10th, Burnley's at 4th. Uh, Bristol City's 3 points off of the playoff spots, actually. And actually, with a win, would probably, depending on the Watford Plymouth result, might even take a playoff spot. But that's how crowded it is in that top half of the table, up to fifth actually. Um, but yeah, this will be, I think, a good game, a good test for Bristol City as well. I just can't see it being. I just don't see Bristol City having enough quality to gain all 3 points. Um, Next up is Coventry at home versus Sheffield United. Um, Frank Lampard for Coventry is in Coventry are in advanced talks for him to be the manager, and it's, as of recording, 3 days away from this match, and he's not been officially announced. So this is either going to be he's going to be the manager for their next match, which is, I believe, let's see here, for Coventry, their next match would be in midweek, I think, against Burnley. So they would be if Lampard doesn't sign this week, is not on the touchline for this coming game against Sheffield United. Odds are he's likely to be on the touchline if he's hired for Burnley in midweek. Um, yeah, Coventry getting an excellent draw against Sunderland last time out. A 2-2 draw where they were down 2-0 and had the guts to come back and tie this game, and honestly had chances to actually take the lead. Um, so great, huge result after the Mark Robbins sacking just days before that Sunderland game. Sheffield United, meanwhile, just on a tear lately. They beat up Sheffield Wednesday 1-0 in the Steel City Derby. Uh, right before the day before the international break started. Yeah, this could be an interesting match considering, Coventry are at home. They're gonna want, Reece Carr is gonna have them fired up. You know, Coventry themselves are near the bottom half of the table. They are only a point off the relegation zone. Depending on results, they could fall back into it. We'll have to see. But yeah, so this could be a huge game for both sides. Sheffield United, of course, tied on points now with Sunderland at the top of the table on 31 points. They are just back by 2 goals in terms of goal difference. Yeah, this is Sheffield United are one of the best defenses in the championship. Coventry have an attack that can be very good, but it can also be very inconsistent. Um, Haji Wright, of course, being the prime example of a good striker on form for the Coventry. He has 7 goals in 15 matches. Meanwhile, Sheffield United's Gustavo Hammer has 4 goals in 14 matches. Sheffield United are not a team that scores a bunch, and are very much a dominate possession, dominate defensively, and they will pounce on the mistakes you make and make you turn you over, stuff like that. Coventry much more under Mark Robbins at least, much more offensive minded, wing play, get it into the box and let Haji Wright and Ellis Sims do their work. Uh, Ellis Sims actually has only scored 2 goals this year, which is unusual considering the hot form he was in last year. Um, Obviously, Coventry have not had the best year as a result of kind of a poor start in form. Um, it's hard not to see Sheffield United getting all 3 points. To be honest, this is a team that is very good, very much in form. After the straight losses, they've gone right back on track with wins over Bristol City and Sheffield Wednesday and Blackburn, and Stoke. So like 4 straight matches on the bounce, 4 straight wins on the bounce, and yeah, they're looking for a fifth. It's at Coventry. This could be a very close game, but I would expect it to be like a 1-0 or 2-1 Sheffield United win. Um, much as Coventry, probably would they might have the new manager bounce still. Sheffield United just have so much quality. It's hard to see them. losing to Coventry. But it is the championship. Anything is possible. So that would be kind of a fun result if Coventry did somehow um, split or even take all 3 points for Sheffield United. Sheffield Wednesday Cardiff is a kind of bottom of the table matchup here. Sheffield Wednesday, of course, like we just said, lost to Sheffield United in the Steel City Derby 1-0 off of a Tyrese Campbell goal. Cardiff, meanwhile, sit right at the top of the relegation zone in the logjam for 15 points, coming off of a 3-1 loss to Blackburn at home before the international break. They are tied actually on goal difference with Luton, so it's just a matter of goals scored really in terms of how close the margin is for Cardiff to be in the relegation zone. Um, Wednesday, meanwhile, are in 15th with 18 points, so they are a little. They're close, but they're safe for now, unless unless Cardiff somehow pull out a win. Um, and reduce their goal difference. Then Wednesday might all of a sudden get right back down to the bottom of the table. Um, it's a very interesting matchup, this one, because um, Cardiff were on a good run of form until their last two games. Last two games have been losses for the Bluebirds, 3-1 and 1-0 losses respectively. One to Luton Town as well, so that's huge in terms of the relegation race right now. Um, yeah, this and Wednesday, they they have the pieces. It sometimes just feels like they cannot find a way to score. And yeah, Josh Windus has only scored 4 goals. He's the lead goal scorer for the Owls, and this is at Sheffield Wednesday, by the way. So I mean, you always expect them to have kind of a bumper crowd at um at home, and Wednesday always seem to have a good home advantage. As a result, it just if Cardiff want to stay out of this relegation zone, they need to start picking up some points, and this is a good way to do it against the Sheffield Wednesday team, who are coming off a Derby loss, who just don't know really how to score consistently. Um, they do have a very healthy goal difference. Uh, Neither of them have a very healthy goal difference, actually. Um, Both are -8 and -9. Um, yeah, this I could see this being a draw. I really could. Um, there just doesn't seem much to separate the two. Both do not score a ton of goals; they allow a ton, and they're coming up against each other. And who knows? For all I know, this could be like a 3-3 score fest. Um, yeah, I just it seems like they're two even teams that just could just split the points and go home, kind of happy but not thoroughly. Um, I do if I had to pick definitely Cardiff feel like the more consistent scoring team of the two lately, just because they've had a better run of form lately. But that's not saying much considering you know 2 straight losses. Wednesday, meanwhile, have lost 3 of 5, and Cardiff have won 2 of 5 and lost 2 and drawn 1. So it's very weird, dreadful form. Both teams need the points. Wednesday just to keep themselves a healthy distance away from the relegation zone. A point, I think, would do just that. Get them at 19 points. Meanwhile, Cardiff would get 16, maybe even get themselves out of the relegation zone, depending on results. But yeah, I could see this being a draw. Blackburn Portsmouth. Blackburn, like we just talked about, came off of a 3-1 win over Cardiff. Yeah, very convincing, very solid win for Blackburn. And this is at home against Portsmouth, who just got a win actually. Their first home win of the year, beating Preston North End 3-1. Yeah, so that was huge. Um, One encouraging thing for Portsmouth, they are getting last leading goal scorer for them, Colby Bishop, back from injury. He scored the penalty in the last minute of the game, against Preston North End to make it 3-1 on a penalty. So he's off the mark this year. Um, yeah, this is going to be Blackburn very inconsistent as well. There's not one consistent team really in the championship this year. Right now, I mean, it feels like Sheffield United are the most consistent right now. But, Blackburn, they had the 3-1 win over Cardiff, but lost 2-0 to Stoke, lost 2-0 to Sheffield United, um, and lost 1-0 at Watford. So, like, they needed those points against Cardiff because they were starting to really falter quite a bit, including a 0-0 draw that kind of started this poor run of form um, against West Brom. And yeah, this is just a win they probably need to get and probably should, considering how bad Portsmouth's defense has been. Um, and this is at Blackburn at Ewood Park, so that you could say that would help them. Portsmouth, meanwhile, of course, they're at the bottom of the. I think they're bottom of the table. Actually, no, they aren't anymore. They're 2 points off the bottom of the table, at 12 points, to QPR's 10, and only 3 points away from out of the relegation zone. So they have the potential with a win to actually maybe get out of the relegation zone, but that's going to be a hard task considering um, John Eustace has a good squad. Like they have Andreas Weimann, they have who scored 4 goals. They have Yuki Ohashi, who's also scored 4 goals. Um, yeah, at the same time though, Blackburn have been very off this year and have been so inconsistent. I could see Portsmouth somehow sneaking away with all 3 points as well. You would think though, Blackburn being top half the table for so long, they're finally. I think maybe this is them finally kind of starting to slip kind of back into where people saw them at the beginning of the year, kind of near the bottom of the table, not relegation zone. Yeah, Portsmouth, meanwhile, if they can tighten up their defense and find a quality, and Colby Bishop is that kind of one attacking piece they need, they could get themselves out of the relegation zone. Right now, though, I could easily see this being a Blackburn win or a draw. I, I, I just don't find Portsmouth very convincing right now. A win against Blackburn would do a lot in that area. But right now, I would lean Blackburn if I had to pick one of the two sides, but I could easily see a draw happening as well. Luton Town versus Hull City. Hull City coming off of a 2-1 loss to West Brom over the last weekend of play. Um, they went down 2-0, then got a goal back at home. This is at home at the MKM, and they just couldn't find the second, even though they had a lot of chances near the end to make it equalizer. They just couldn't find it, and yeah, um, Hull has just had a dreadful season. Luton didn't have that great a result either. They got thumped by Middlesbrough 4-1. Um, actually, no, 5-1 to go into the relegate into the international break with. Yeah, the just very poor defensively. And just could. It was a bad performance all around for Luton Town. Um, both these teams do not have a very good goal threat. Because I mean, of the two, Carlton Morris is the of Luton Town is the more consistent goal threat, and he doesn't even play half the time. Um, I mean, he's played 12 matches, but I think he's sat against Middlesbrough. Um, they both allow a ton of goals, specifically Luton Town, as their last result demonstrates. Um, I just don't see Hull having the consistent goal scoring threats that Middlesbrough do. Um, yeah, this feels very much like a draw of two teams that are very. I mean, when Luton Town's on its game, they are very solid at the back. When Luton Town is on its game, it can be solid at the back. It just always isn't usually solid. And Hull actually, you know, it's the same thing for them. They have not as bad of a goal difference, which is why They're above Luton Town in the little logjam of 15 points. Um, -4 goal difference for Hull, -9 for Luton Town. Yeah, this is just a very. It feels like a very ugly game that could end 0-0. I could easily see that happening, and it just doesn't feel like a pretty game at all. Um, Luton Town of the two probably feels like the one that could sneak away with all 3 points. Hull just feel very inconsistent on attacking wise. It is interesting to see that also Luton Town have the most losses in the championship this year so far. Yeah, both are. Yeah, I can see both of these. Whoever loses this game, if there's a loser, probably gets their manager sacked. Rob Edwards is very dangerously close to that. People thought he might be sacked over the international break. He has not been. Um, so there seems to be a little goodwill still left in the bank for Rob Edwards, but that might expire if they get to the relegation zone somehow with a loss or something like that. Depending on results as well, other results as well. So yeah, this is huge for both clubs. Hull, of course, feeling very disappointed after what was a what they wanted to be a better season after what happened last year, and it just isn't and hasn't been. They're just yeah. Like I said, this feels like a 0-0 draw waiting to happen. Um, then we get to kind of what feels like the best match of the week. Um, Millwall versus Sunderland. It is at the Den, so Millwall's at home. Um, Millwall coming off a draw to Stoke City at Stoke, 1-1. After winning a few games, including a win home versus Leeds and a win versus Burnley, kind of really announcing their presence in the top half of the table and were in the playoff places briefly um, before that draw. Sunderland, meanwhile, they have drawn 3 straight. They have drawn against QPR, they have drawn against Preston North End, and then they drew, like I said earlier, their 2-2 draw with Coventry, where they were 2-0 up, and then gave up 2 goals and almost could have lost that game. Really deserved to lose it. Uh, it would have been the first, I think, loss. This would it be their first loss at home? Um, it might be. Yeah, this would be their first loss at home. Um, if they were somehow that would have been their first loss at home if they had somehow done that, but they didn't, and here they are, top of the table, tied with Sheffield United, and um, only on top because of goal difference right now. So they face a Millwall team that is very scrappy. Duncan Watmore leads Millwall's attack with 5 goals. Wilson Isidore also has 5 goals. Watmore has played one more match than Isidore. Romain Mundle also has 4 goals for Sunderland, and Romain SA for Millwall has 3. So the trademark, though, has been the people who help the attack, namely like Joe Bellingham, who actually has a lot of transfer rumors circulating around him right now, as does Chris Rigg. This is kind of the price that Sunderland are kind of having to pay right now because of how good they've been. They've got a lot of eyes on them, and Borussia Dortmund, apparently Joe wants to go there, and Borussia Dortmund are willing to pay £25 million for him. The same price they paid for Job's brother Jude Bellingham when he was at Birmingham City. Um, and so obviously this would be a very healthy sum for Sunderland to put into their transfer budget and their finances. Um, it feels like though if they do that, um, that might hurt them in the end. It'll be very interesting to see what happens in that transfer window is just 2 weeks away, by the way. So that's going to be quite a interesting. No, it's a month away, a little over a month away. Um, but still, you're going to start hearing a lot of rumors right around the next couple of days, starting around the next couple of days before the window opens. And I mean, that's kind of Sunderland's MO, selling players that are young and getting a huge profit on them, just like a Jack Clark over the off season, in the summer transfer window. Anyways, back to the game. Um, this feels like a game that I guess kind of why I brought up the transfers for Sunderland is Sunderland have looked lost without Joe Bellingham. They have not as consistent a goal scoring threat. They have been impotent in a lot of ways and can't really finish games or even get ahead at the final end of games now without Joe Bellingham being there to help create a lot of chances. He's not on the assist list as one of the leaders there, but he's definitely been one who has created a lot of chances and been very disruptive in terms of the Sunderland attack. So that could be huge if they were to lose Joe Bellingham. And they will not have Joe Bellingham for this game because he's on the final game of his 3-game suspension, um, which includes a yellow card accumulation plus the red card he received against QPR. Um, so this is a huge opportunity for Millwall to sneak 3 points by. Millwall right now are sitting pretty at 8th place. A win gets them to 26 points. Um, not far off the playoff spots. Surprisingly, Millwall were kind of thought to be more of a mid-table team. They still kind of are. They aren't really like the most world beaters of teams, but they've been able to seek results like wins over Burnley um and Leeds because of stout defense, and both have been at home, and now they get Sunderland, so they could beat 3 of the top 4 clubs if they were somehow to pull 3 points out of this. The thing is, they don't score a ton of goals. Sunderland love to score, and they have a good defense led by Des Shirkin. Um, they have a very good, healthy goal differential as well. Sunderland do. Uh, Millwall do too. They have a +5 goal difference, so that's not bad either. But yeah, this somehow I could see another draw for Sunderland happening just because Millwall like to play a very physical, style defense that just doesn't give up a ton. Neither does Sunderland, and yeah, this feels like a draw maybe possibly, and they split the points, and Sunderland get out of the Joe Bellingham less era for now until maybe the transfer window, um, unscathed without a loss. But if Millwall were to pull this off, that would be pretty huge, and you'd probably a little bit. You're starting to ask questions about what Sunderland are up to with those 3 draws, but right now they're still top of the league, and there's not much to question with them being at the top of the league. So a defeat might send some cracks. People might start noticing some cracks in the armor. Preston North End versus Derby County. Derby County coming off a 1-1 draw with Plymouth, like we said earlier. Preston North End coming off of the 3-1 loss to Portsmouth at Pompey. Um, Before that, they drew 0-0 with Sunderland, which is so confusing. But yeah, both teams not very goal-heavy scoring teams. Both teams love to be physical and play defense. Paul Heckingbottom, when he first came to Preston, it felt like he was changing a lot of things. It doesn't feel like that now so much. Derby County, they're much better at home than away. Um, I believe the win over Coventry City a week or over the last weekend, or midweek it might be actually, before the international break. I think that was their first away win of the season, and I mean Derby County do tend to they tend to score more, but they don't score a ton. They allow a ton too. So does Preston North End. They have allowed 23 goals. This just feels like a draw. It really does. I don't want to say for Derby it's lower half because they are not. They are 12th in the table. A win gets them 22nd and could put them top half of the table, depending on results. But yeah, they're very much a mid-table team. So is Preston. He's more towards the bottom half actually. At 15 points, they're tied with Hull and Luton and Cardiff at 15 points. So yeah, I could see this being like a 1-1 draw. Both teams getting like an early goal and just slugging it out from there. Derby do have, I feel like, the better attacking quality. So if I was to pick a winner, it'd probably be Derby. But it just feels very much like a 0-0, 1-1 draw could easily be the case in this game. QPR plays Stoke. They are hosting Stoke, to be correct and precise. Stoke are coming off of a 1-1 draw with Millwall, and QPR coming off of a pretty brutal stretch. It includes their most recent result, which is a 2-0 loss at home to Leeds. Um, yeah, QPR just awful. They only have one win on the year. They actually now have the fewest wins in the championship now. That Portsmouth got that win um, over Preston over the weekend, a couple weekends ago, and now um, they face a Stoke squad that is starting to come back into form a little bit after being out of form. Stoke have been undefeated in three straight, including 2 wins and a draw. 2 wins over Derby County and Blackburn, and then the draw to Millwall, which is a pretty impressive result considering how hot and for Millwall has been lately. Um, yeah, I do think Stoke, if they play their game, should secure the 3 points. They just have had a lot of injuries and are kind of inconsistent in front of goal. Um, they have the -1 goal difference, but QPR is even worse in terms of defense and goal difference. They have allowed 25 goals and have a -13 goal differential. Yeah, like I said, this should be a Stoke win. Stoke just feel like the better team. And QPR just are not in form or in any kind of sort of fashion to that feels like to pull an upset. But who knows? It could be their day. It's the championship. If they were to pull a result, it would be shocking. But it's the championship, so anything like that could happen and absolutely flip the relegation zone on its head. So we shall have to see. But it does feel like Stoke should win this pretty comfortably. Um, then we come to Norwich City at West Brom, and West Brom have not really been able to find the goal actually at home. They have, I think, failed to score in 5 of their 6 or 7 matches at home, which is bizarre. I mean, to be fair, they haven't conceded a ton at home either. I think they've only conceded 2 or 3 goals at home, including the one loss they had at home to Middlesbrough. Um, or is that their only loss at home? Um, I have to look. Um, yeah, I think that was their only loss at home, which is so interesting. Yeah, that was the only loss at home to Middlesbrough. Um, Otherwise they've drawn or won at home. But yeah, it's a very bizarre West Brom team that just doesn't score a ton. They did get the 2-1 win at Hull City over the last result for them. Norwich, meanwhile, falling to Bristol City 2-0, and after kind of a hot start, looking like they might be back, they've kind of fallen off again. They've lost 3 straight now to Cardiff, Sheffield Wednesday, and now Bristol City. Um, After their 3-3 draw with Middlesbrough, um, which is kind of the opposite for what Middlesbrough have been. But anyways, Warriors sides obviously the story of the championship. Both these squads boast the top 2 scorers of the championship, with Warriors sides having scored 11 goals. Josh Baja for West Brom having scored 9. Um, so yeah, this is a game that showcases 2 pretty good strikers and 2 teams. Well, especially West Brom, that are yeah pretty solid. Well, West Brom is pretty solid in the back. Just looking at these stats for Norwich defensively, my word, they're good at scoring goals. They're just not good at keeping people out of the goal. 22 goals allowed is amazing, considering this was a Norwich team that felt last year just felt so unstoppable. Granted, they've had a lot of injuries, including to their keeper Angus Gunn and to Marcelo Nunez, who is one of their best creative threats. I don't know if he's going to be available for this match, but that would be huge if he was. Um, yeah, this is a West Brom team that don't concede a ton. So, if it, one interesting thing about Borja Signs is 5 or 6 of his goals have been scored from at or outside the penalty area, and there were some very tricky shots as well. That I think it was a combined XG of 0.56, so which is pretty crazy that he could get off shots from difficult angles and score them. It just, but he is coming up against one of the better keepers in the championship, in Alex Palmer from West Brom, who has just been a beast in front of goal and just can't. He seems like a brick wall right now. Um, that could obviously change, but right now, I could easily see this being a draw. Norwich really need the points to kind of stop this free fall of theirs from happening. They went from seventh in the table to they are now 14th in the table, so a fall of 7 places. And they switched places with Middlesbrough, who were eighth at the time of that draw they had with Middlesbrough. So this feels like two teams that should be both compete for playoff spots. West Brom right now is in 5th place. Um, but yeah, I could easily see this being a draw somehow, or Joshua just scoring a late winner. I watch it be like a goal fest between him and Boreas Signs, both like scoring like 2 each and ending like a 2-2 draw, and nothing comes as a result of it. But yeah, this should be a fun game, I think. So, um, yeah, looking forward to that one. Final game on Saturday. Oxford United host Middlesbrough. Um, Oxford United coming off the 1-0 defeat to Watford. Meanwhile, Middlesbrough thrashing Luton Town 5-1. Um, big news for Middlesbrough. Looks like they will not have Aiden Morse or Hayden Hackney available for this match, as both were pulled during the international break for injuries. Um, sprained knee for Aiden Morse, it sounds like. Neither There's not really any confirmation as to how serious the injuries are. Hayden Hackney sounds less serious than Aiden Morris, who might be out just for a few weeks, but it'll be interesting to see for a few weeks, maybe 3 or 4, I think is what's said for Aiden Morris potentially, which is huge because Middlesbrough's midfield has been so stalwart with those two at the midfield, but Johnny House and Dan Barlaser aren't anything to sneeze at either, as both have kind of found their form as well. Um, Middlesbrough just have a lot of attacking quality in terms of Tommy Conway, who scored 5 goals. Emmanuel Latte-Loth has found his form lately, so is Finn Azaz, who's one of the best players in the championship right now, and especially in terms of creating. He's the assist leader in the championship, actually. Um, Oxford just do not score a ton of goals. Mark Harrison scored 4. He's the leading goal scorer for Oxford. Um, Oxford are incredibly hard to break down at home, and that has kind of consistently been their thing. Um, lately, though, they have kind of started to that edge has started to kind of wear off a bit, um, including a 2-1 loss to Swansea at home, and they barely beat Hull 1-0 as well. Drawing, they also like to draw. They're a very heavy draw team, so this could easily be a draw. But if Middlesbrough can keep their goal threat continuing from over the last few games over the international before the international break, um, before the 2 straight losses, to Coventry and uh, for the loss to Coventry and then the draw to Norwich. Um, considering they've only lost 1 of their last 5, which is pretty good. Um, but yeah, I would think Middlesbrough do have the slight edge in this one. They should be able to win this, but you never know. It's the championship. Watch this be a draw, and it keeps Middlesbrough a win. Actually, I think depending on results, get Middlesbrough into the playoff places, and they could, depending on results, climb as high as 5th. Um, but we'll have to see. It's always a very interesting prospect in the championship. But if if Middlesbrough keep up their momentum and they can score, keep finding the net like they have in the last few games, then I could see them pulling off the win over Oxford. Um, yeah, and then the final game, um, of the weekend is Swansea hosting Leeds. Swansea coming off of a 1-0 loss at Burnley at Turf Moor. It was a pretty competitive game until the last minute of stoppage time when Burnley got a penalty, which they slotted home and got all 3 points out of it. Meanwhile, Leeds coming off a dominating 2-0 win over QPR. Leeds are third in the table. Swansea, I believe, are ninth. No, they're 11th. Excuse me. They are 11th actually. At 19 points. Yeah, this feels like a game that could be competitive. It just very much depends on how Swansea turn up. If they can turn up on their best form like they have been kind of lately, um, they could get something out of this. It just feels like Leeds have a lot of attacking quality. They've won 3 of their last 5. They just they're so good. Leeds are just have so much talent. William Gnonto is actually rumored to be leaving on transfer, which could really hurt that attack for Leeds, but you never know. Um, Transfer window is always a crazy time, but yeah, it just really depends what Swansea shows up. If it's the poor Swansea, Leeds are probably gonna thump them by like 3 goals. But if Swansea does show up and make it competitive, they could easily draw this game. But Leeds just, I think, have the better quality. And Leeds should pull out this all 3 points. If they don't, that would be very disappointing for them. So yeah, that is your championship, your pitch side preview for the weekend of action. We will probably briefly recap um, and preview as there will be some midweek matches coming up in the EFL. Real quick before we head grid side, I do want to, if you're interested in EFL fantasy at all, um, I do want to pick out a couple of interesting people that you might want to keep an eye on, or teams to keep an eye on. Luton, Luton Town. Leeds are facing Swansea and Luton Town. Swansea's the tougher of the 2 matches, like I just said. But for Leeds, that's in my opinion, those are very winnable matches. And yeah, you could see Swansea don't score a ton of goals, so I would probably maybe start Eon Millier. A goal for Leeds, he's a very solid choice in that department. He's usually a pretty good shot stopper, except for the one howler he had versus Sunderland. But overall, he's a pretty solid choice in goal. Harry Suter for Sheffield United. He's played Coventry and Oxford. For Sheffield United, that just feels like a very couple easy layup games that they should win. And with Sheffield United being such a good defensive team, that doesn't feel like a reach. And fit as he just creates a ton of chances. Um, that could easily um, that if Middlesbrough keep their goal scoring run going, he could easily get a ton of points. A team you might want to also keep an eye on. Stoke City do play QPR and Preston North End, so those are teams they could easily get some points on if they can stay consistent as well. Bolton do take on Blackpool and Cambridge. They might be a team to look at if you want to maybe pick up some points as well. So yeah, that's your EFL fantasy kind of teams to keep players to keep an eye on. Let's head grid side now, as we've got a lot to go over on that department. The Steelers taking on the Browns Thursday night at Cleveland. Steelers coming off the huge win over the Ravens, 18-16, getting a huge divisional tiebreaker plus a 2-game separation now in the division. Um, is huge. Meanwhile, the Browns just getting obliterated by the Saints with a 21 straight points. That after being tied 14-14 with the Saints, just the Saints pulled away quickly. Thanks to Taysom Hill, this game should not be close. Steelers are very good. They have a great defense. If they keep playing like they have been lately, Steelers should probably win this comfortably. I don't know, 10 maybe more points. With it being the Steelers, though, it could easily be a 10, maybe fewer point game, just because they're such a good defense. They might take their foot off the gas at some point. But yeah, this should be a very comfortable win for the Steelers on Thursday night. Um, Going into the Sunday games, Chiefs Panthers. Chiefs coming off their first loss of the season at Buffalo, 30-21. Panthers coming off of a bye week actually after their two straight wins before the bye, including a win in Munich over the Giants. This should be a pretty comfortable win for the Chiefs. They are expected to get maybe Isaiah Pacheco and Charles Omenihu back, which would be huge on both sides of the ball, considering Pacheco broke his leg against the Bengals. And Charles Omenihu, of course, tore his ACL in the AFC Championship game last year. Um, yeah, if the Chiefs, at all are consistent on offense, and they have started to be really good at the red zone, actually. I believe in the last two games, they are 7 of 7 in the red zone, which is a huge improvement over kind of the beginning of the season, and especially over last year where they were not too good at the red zone. So if they keep their red zone performance up, they can drive, they can get some solid drives in, and the defense can get to Bryce Young. This should be a pretty comfortable win in Charlotte. If it's a close game, I would not be shocked either, just because that's how the Chiefs play games this year. But maybe they come out this week and kind of just put pedal to metal and just thrash the Panthers, and after like three quarters, just rest some people. Who knows? It is at Charlotte, so anything can happen. But I do see the Chiefs winning that one. Buccaneers Giants. Bucks coming off of their bye week, and as are the Giants. So both are coming in fully rested. The huge news concerning both teams: Giants are gonna have a quarterback change. Um, Daniel Jones just hasn't been it this year. Um, there is a lot of talk, apparently, according to sources like George Schultz on Twitter, who is saying that a lot of Giants players are pretty upset that Daniel Jones is being benched for Tommy DeVito. Tommy DeVito, of course, having in gotten several wins last year, and made the Giants look competitive last year, where they looked pretty bad overall. But he was a kind of a bright spot for a bit for the Giants when Daniel Jones was injured last year. But yeah, this year, Giants players feel very strongly that Daniel Jones is the guy in that locker room, and he should not be benched, including Dexter Lawrence, who said something like, "You need to point at other players and not just to Daniel Jones, who's the guy. He has taken accountability, and he doesn't need to be the scapegoat for what is a team effort that has been very poor." And I mean, you can definitely see the point that Dexter Lawrence is making. Um, and a lot of the players apparently in the Giants locker room are saying, so this could be a huge turning point in terms of Brian Daboll and his coaching career. If this gets ugly, let's say the Giants, like they should lose this game. It is at MetLife, but it's the Bucks, and they are getting to their huge news. They are probably going to have Mike Evans play this week after his injury a few weeks ago against the Ravens. He is expected to be back for this game, and yeah, if the Bucks keep their if the Bucks can just keep how they've been playing going, they should win this comfortably. This is a Giants team that's pretty bad on both sides of the ball. And so you can understand why Dexter Lawrence is saying the comments he is saying, because it is a team effort. It is not just an individual sport, and often quarterbacks do get scapegoated for poor play by a team. But he has not been great either himself this year. It has not been great really since the year where they had that wild card run and beat the Vikings that year and then lost in the divisional round. But yeah, Brian Abel has made the decision to go to Tommy DeVito now, and we'll have to see how that works. And I don't think it's going to go too well. Um, Cowboys Commanders, It's a divisional matchup. Cowboys getting boat raced by the Eagles. No, not the Eagles. Getting boat raced by the Texans in a pretty ugly game where they were competitive for a little bit and just couldn't find the extra gear. Of course, they are without Dak Prescott. as their quarterback. He's out for the year with a torn hamstring. Washington, meanwhile, they are the ones who lost to the Philadelphia Eagles in a game that, after a slow start by the Eagles, didn't feel close by the end. Um, and the Eagles took firm control of the NFC South. So the Commanders are going to obviously um, want to keep within reach of the Eagles. I believe that it's a 2 game distance now in the division, or 1.5 actually, because the Eagles haven't had their bye week yet. Um, is it their bye week this week? No, there's not. Um, yeah, the Eagles had not had their bye week. I think that's next week. But yeah, this should be a comfortable win for the Commanders. The Commanders have been playing pretty well. Something to watch is Jaden Daniels did not look himself near the end of the game. He might be still recovering from his rib injury he had a few weeks ago. But yeah, that's something to keep an eye on. I just don't trust the Cowboys defense to contain the Commanders. This could be an ugly game as well. It is a divisional game, so it will be close. It is in Washington, but I do expect the Commanders to pull this one out and keep themselves in the division race, as well as maintaining their playoff positions in the NFC. Um, Patriots Dolphins, another divisional game. Patriots losing 28-22 to the Rams in Foxborough. Dolphins pulling out a comfortable um, ish win over the Raiders. It looked close, but then they eventually just pulled away against a pretty morbid Raiders team. And it does look like the Dolphins are finally starting to become themselves, and it might be a little too late, but you never know. I believe they are in ninth place in the AFC actually, and have a decent conference record actually, which might be huge come playoff time. They are 3-4 in the conference, so that could be huge. They're behind the Colts and Broncos. Um, they've already had their bye. The Colts and Broncos have not, so that will be huge when they do get that game in hand taken care of with the Colts and Broncos going by. Um, with the Patriots, you do like Drake May and how he's been performing for them. He has been very solid quarterback. I just don't see them beating the Dolphins, who have a much improved defense. Tua's return has definitely bolstered that offense for the Dolphins once again. And they are back in the playoff hunt. And if they keep getting hotter as they have been, who knows? They could easily sneak into the playoffs, and you do not want to face this Dolphins team when they are on a roll offensively. And they are starting to become, a threat. Tyreek is finally starting to heat up. Devon A. is heating up a bit. And this is against a Patriots team that just doesn't have any particular streaks besides maybe quarterback. So yeah, I just see this being a comfortable Dolphins win in the end in Miami. Yeah, this just doesn't feel like a close game. Another not so close feeling game is the Texans hosting the Titans. Titans losing 23-13 to the Vikings, and like we just talked about, Texans beating up on the Colts 30 on the Cowboys 34-10. Yeah, this feels like a game that the Texans should win. It is a divisional game. Historically, the Texans have had trouble with the Titans, but this is in Houston. The Titans are not playing well on offense. Will Levis has returned, and he's still not played very well. Um, Bright spot on offense has been Calvin Ridley and Tony Pollard. And when your defense doesn't have a big offense to support it like the Titans defense does, it just eventually crumbles. And the Texans got Nico Collins back last week. They have Joe Mixon, and if this offense can start to get rolling, it has not all year. It's admittedly been very injury plagued. This could be a team that takes off eventually. But yeah, the Texans should win this kind of comfortably. Um, and maybe we see their offense continue to improve as well. Lions go to Indy to face the Colts, two dome teams facing each other. Lions coming off the shellacking of the Jacksonville Jaguars, just putting belt to butt, 52-6 at in Detroit. Meanwhile, the Colts getting the come from behind win against the Jets, 28-27. Anthony Richardson's return. Um, Big damper spot for the Lions. That feels huge. I mean, like we said this about Aiden Hutchinson a while back when he broke his leg, but this feels huge to me in a way because Alex Anzalone broke his forearm and he is out 6 to 8 weeks, I believe it is. Um, and it just feels huge because he's their defensive captain on Detroit. He is their hard hitter, the one who just makes the Bills so hard to defend, and is always reading plays so well. Just being the good captain on defense he is and has been since he was with the Saints. This should be a comfortable win for Detroit, but this I could surprisingly see this being a close game for Indy. Um, and if Indy somehow could just pull out some of the things they got that were positive from the Jets game and maybe clean up some of the mistakes. Anthony Richardson did look a little better in their last game against the Jets. He wasn't perfect by any means, but he had a much better game. He didn't make any turnover plays. Um, yeah, this I think their only turnover was the Jonathan Taylor fumble, actually. But yeah, if Anthony Richardson can play a clean game, and yeah, this should be a comfortable win. The Lions have a good defense and offense that is just absolutely lethal. The Colts do not have a great defense, I think, and I forget their stats on defense. It's not great, I don't think. But yeah, this I could see this being a competitive game, and somehow if the Colts are able to stay in this game, the Lions are favored by 7 at Indy. This just feels like a lot. But I do see the Lions pulling this out. I just don't know how if it's going to be a butt whooping again or not. But the Lions should pull this out. If not, that would be a very surprising result. It would very much keep the Colts alive in the playoff discussion. Vikings Bears, another divisional matchup this week. Vikings getting the 23-13 win over the Titans. Bears losing to the Packers in heartbreaking fashion, getting a blocked field goal to lose 20-19. Um, Yeah, I just this. I think this would be a competitive game because both we started to see the Bears' offense finally start to put their offense together a little bit lately. Under now that they fired their OC and got a new one, but the Vikings defense is just so good. They have an offense that's starting to kind of complement them a little bit. It's still slow, but it's starting to take off a little bit again. And I just think the Vikings will win this kind of comfortably. Maybe by like it's not going to be more than a touchdown, I would say. It's going to be a competitive game. But I do think the Vikings will take this. I just like their defense a lot better. And and I think they could slow down the Bears offense enough to where they will pull out the win. Um, Broncos Raiders. Raiders getting slapped around by the Dolphins 34-19. Talking about slapping around, the Broncos just absolutely demolished the Falcons, um, going right at them and winning 38-6 in Denver. Broncos Raiders is always such a weird matchup, just because they both play each other quite well and match up in a lot of ways. But this year just feels different. The Broncos have was a offensive rookie of the year candidate this year, Bo Nix, who has played a lot better recently, and the Raiders have just not played well. Gardner Minshew did play better against the Dolphins. He just wasn't great enough to beat the Dolphins, who have a pretty good team. Uh, Now he's going up against one of the best defenses in the league in the Broncos, and yeah, this could be a good close game. It's a division game, so anything can happen. Um, it could absolutely be an ugly game. Broncos are favored by 6. I do see this being less than that, probably a field goal game. I do see the Broncos pulling this out just because they're the better team, I think. If any given Sunday, though, if the Raiders pull this out, that would be a huge, crippling blow to the Broncos' playoff chances. and might see someone sneak into the 7th seed behind them. So that would be very interesting. I do think the Broncos pull this out though in a tight division game. Um, Broncos. Moving on from that, we've got a couple of huge games in the NFC. 49ers take on the Packers. Um, in Lambeau, Packers just beating the Bears, like we said, 20-19 off the blocked field goal. Niners losing to the Seahawks. Um, in last second dramatic fashion to drop to 5-5 and be last, I believe, in the division, which is a weird to say with the San Francisco 49ers. This is such a huge game for the Niners and the Packers, both in terms of playoff seeding. Yeah, the Niners are last in the division. But yeah, Packers just feel kind of inconsistent on offense. It's not they aren't hitting on full cylinders yet, with Jordan Love kind of having his injury issues this year. Um, Niners, of course, have been heavily injured. Um, they felt like they kind of, regressed a bit on offense, even though Christian McCaffrey's back. The defense has still played pretty good overall. They have their cracks, though, and those can be exposed by a good team. And the Packers, when they're on their game, are a good offense. They just need to be on their game. And they're coming up against a Niners team that does have a decent defense. It's just not one that is not really that great. Um, yeah, and the Packers defense, if they can get turnovers, can be good. When they start, I mean, we've seen this year when they make the other team turn the ball over, they can absolutely get on a roll and be a very good defense, very stingy. But that depends on if they can get turnovers, and I feel like that's such a obscure criteria. And I mean, they did make the stops they needed to against the Bears, to be fair, but still, it's the Bears. Now you're playing the Niners, who are desperate at this point to get a playoff spot. And yeah, if the Niners lose this game, that could start spelling the end of their time this year in the playoff hunt. But it's not gonna quite yet. Um, of the two, I would probably slightly lean Packers just because it is in Lambeau. Right now, the Packers are favored by 2 points, so that does say that the home advantage is kind of key in what the odds makers are saying. Um, but yeah, I do think the Packers are slightly more healthy, and they just have a slight edge in terms of just momentum, and they are going to be at home as well compared to the Niners, who just aren't that good on the road for some reason this year and just haven't been fully clicking yet. If somehow Christian McCaffrey though does get going, I can see the Niners winning this comfortably. Then we move on to one of the more fun games I think this week: Cardinals Seahawks. Seahawks, of course, like we just said, coming off of the last second win over the Niners in a huge game that takes a lot of pressure off their playoff chase. It puts them right back in the heat of things. Meanwhile, the Cardinals are leading the NFC West. Who would have thought? They are third seed right now, actually, because of the Falcons. Um, and the Seahawks are the ninth seed of the NFC, only a game back of the Commanders. Um, and yeah, this is a pretty. This should be a fun game. I think it's a divisional game. Both these teams do not like each other. Cardinals are such a scrappy team. I have really fallen in love with this squad. Um, the Seahawks are also pretty scrappy as well. They are a fun bunch as well. It is in Seattle. It's going to be one of the later games of the week. It's going to be Fox. I think it's Fox's game of the week, which I think is very appropriate. Um, Considering how huge this is going to be in terms of not just the NFC playoff race, but also the NFC West division race. A win for the Seahawks would actually put them in first place, I think, because of the tiebreaker. Um, and it's the first of two games they have against the Cardinals in the home stretch of the season. Um, a Cardinals win, though, it helps give them some distance, depending on other games this week, that would just be huge. like a 2 game lead in the division would be massive. And yeah, it just feels like such a huge game in both ways. I do like the Cardinals in this one. They just has performed more consistently. I think their defense is just a scrappy bunch. Kyler has been playing very solidly this year. James Conner's also played solidly, and they have Marvin Harrison Jr. and they have other guys like Greg Dortch. Um, yeah, I really like this team. Trey McBride's also a good. Jackson Smith and Jigba has been a huge breakout guy this year for the Seahawks. Um, Look for him to do some damage. He could be an X factor for the Seahawks as well. If Kenneth, it really depends because the Seahawks, like I've said all year, do not have a great offensive or defensive line. So if the Cardinals can somehow take advantage of that, they could probably win this game. But I think whichever running back has the better game probably helps their team win. Yeah, this is just such a fun game. I love it. It should be entertaining. It is so many good implications. Um, yeah, I would expect I want the Cardinals to win. I kind of want them to win just because it's such a cool story this year. Kyler Murray, I think, is putting himself firmly in the um, comeback player of the year driver's seat. And with a division win, he would with a division title, he probably does win that award, and very deservedly so. Um, yeah, but I wouldn't be shocked either, honestly, if the Seahawks won this. It is in Lumen Field. That place is going to be rocking because people know how important this game is, and the Seahawks with a win would get the division lead right back. So yeah, huge game, fun game. Can't wait to see how that goes. Eagles Rams is Sunday Night Football. Rams coming off the 28-22 win in Foxborough over the Patriots. Meanwhile, the Eagles getting the Thursday night huge win over the Commanders last week um, to keep their perch atop the 2 seed in the NFC. Meanwhile, the Rams still kind of fighting for their playoff lives. I believe they are the 8th seed in the NFC. They are a game back of the Commanders with a game in hand still because the Commanders have not taken their bye week yet. So, yeah, this is in LA. The Eagles are starting to find their stride. I do think that is huge that they have, a little bit started to find their stride. Saquon Barkley, of course, is not human. He is such a good running back, and I can't believe he's with the Eagles. He makes that running game so good. Um, Bryce Huff did have to have surgery on his hands, so he will not be available for this game for the Eagles. And I think Jalen Hurts popped up on the injury report as well. The Rams is having Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back. The offense has come fully back, and they have been so good for the most part against as an offense, and that's very encouraging for the Rams. Uh, a win here would definitely improve the Rams' playoff chances. Um, and a loss really doesn't affect much for the Eagles because they still have a comfortable lead on the Cardinals in terms of the 2 seed, but still a loss would be kind of interesting and kind of a question mark for the Eagles after such a hot run lately since the Bengals game. They've kind of been on a hot streak. Both teams do not have a consistent defense, so I would say it's gonna be interesting. If Saquon Barkley can take over this game, it's gonna depend. If game is gonna be a shootout, I do kind of expect the Eagles to kind of step up last minute maybe and get a win. I could see this easily being a shootout because both offenses are good and on fire. But I could also see the Eagles just strangling the Rams and keeping Matthew Stafford in the offense on the sideline. This is going to be a good game, I think. Has implications in the AFC playoff race, and of course the division race as well for the Rams, and of course for the Eagles as well. If they lose, the Commanders are right back in the division race. Um, but yeah, this going to be a good game. I do think the Eagles would probably win this. Eagles are favored by 3, so that means practically the odds makers think the home advantage does nothing for the Rams. I would say it's going to be a close game. I could see it being around that score, maybe a 23-21 game in favor of the Eagles. But yeah, I think it's going to be a fun game and should have a lot of implications in terms of the playoffs. And finally, the Ravens Chargers. This is going to be a fun game as well. Two teams that both had opposite results. Ravens losing to the Steelers 18-16 to drop to 7-4. Chargers not charging actually. After having a 24-6 lead, 27-6 lead, they let the Bengals come back and tie it up before getting a J.K. Dobbins touchdown run with 18 seconds left to get a narrow escape win over the Bengals and get a huge boost to their AFC playoff resume. They are now the fifth seed over the Ravens, who are now the sixth seed in the AFC. Um, and the Ravens are only a game ahead of the Broncos for that before the scary precipice drop of the seventh seed. So yeah, this is a game that could determine a lot. Obviously, determines who would be the fifth seed. Whoever wins this would get the fifth seed in the AFC. The loser, um, if it's the Ravens, we might want to start questioning them, even though Lamar's had MVP numbers all year. He's been very good this year. Only 3 picks and 25 touchdowns. So good. Justin Herbert has also been very good. 13 touchdowns, 1 pick. He just doesn't. He gets a lot of his touchdowns taken away by J.K. Dobbins and Lad McConkey. So, yeah. That's kind of where all those touchdowns for Justin Herbert go. But yeah, he's been very good as well. The Chargers have the best scoring defense in the league. That was kind of undone by that third quarter against the Bengals, but still, they are a very stingy defense that don't allow a lot of touchdowns. And yeah, I think this could be a fun game. It might very well determine um, a lot of things in the AFC playoff race, especially that those lower seeds come January. Um, yeah, this is gonna be a fun game. If the both teams like to run the ball, so I would say if Lamar can somehow cook the if they can somehow get the passing game going and get Derrick Henry rumbling, that could be very hard. Keep Justin Herbert on the sideline. Chargers can't score a ton of points um, all the time. They're not very consistent at scoring, but when they are, they get on a roll like they were on Sunday. They can be very dangerous. And yeah, I would barely edge the Ravens in this, but I would not be shocked at all if the Chargers somehow came out firing and somehow got a win over the Ravens and made the Ravens' life very difficult. Um, but yeah, I do think the Ravens just edge it because they have such good offensive talent and enough. I don't like their defense; it's not very consistent for me, but considering how inconsistent the Chargers' offense can be, that might cancel things out. So yeah, I would expect this to be very close. Like 24-23 Ravens, something like that. Very close game. Not much separating these two. And that is your grid side result for the week. Um, Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us for this preview episode. We are on Spotify and on Amazon and on Audible and Amazon Music. Please give us a follow and a like. Leave a comment, a review are always greatly appreciated. Helps the algorithm know and to recommend us to more people who also enjoy our content. If you enjoy our content, we would love to hear and see that as well as help others know and reach others to also make it part of this community as well. We are on YouTube as well, so please go give us a like and subscribe there. Leave a comment. Tell us your favorite part of the episode. What you think? Do you think there are going to be any big upsets this week? Do you think what do you think of the playoff races so far in the NFL? What do you think about how close the championship is this year? It's such a very fun time of year if you're either type of football fan. And yeah, the season's just starting to get going in the EFL and really starting to heat up in the NFL. Things are also starting to really heat up and ramp up as games are becoming more and more important. So yeah, it's going to be so much fun. Please stick around with us for the ride as we continue to cover these results. Um, and we hope that you will stick around and be with us. So yeah, see you next episode. Have a great rest of the week and enjoy all the games.